Imagine you have worked hard for many years, you got your settled status, you paid your taxes, you've been a good citizen, and you make that naturalization application to become a British citizen. And then you receive that awful news of refusal, and you are stuck in a dilemma as to what went wrong. Now, 99% of the people that interact with me on my YouTube videos related to citizenship, they most commonly ask me these questions, and I thought, how about I make that video so that I can help you understand how not to make those mistakes and come out on the top and achieve your dream of becoming a British citizen. So make sure you follow me and watch the video till the end, because I promise you this video might actually change your life for good. So, what is the first question? The first question is, who is eligible to apply to naturalize as a British citizen? So, you have to be at least be of the age of 18 years or above to naturalize as a British citizen. You must be of sound mind. And secondly, if you are a child under the age of 18, then you have to register as a British citizen. You can do that while your parent is applying to naturalize as a British citizen in the same application as a separate applicant. Number two, what is the latest fee that to apply to naturalize as a British citizen? Now, last year the fees was £1,735. This has been increased to £1,839. This includes the citizenship ceremony fees in a group. So, for example, if you go to a council where other people would be also there, that group ceremony fees is included in this amount. So the 3-year route is a dilemma for many people. People don't understand what is a 3-year route or the 5-year route. So let me simplify. So if you are married to someone who's a British citizen, or if you're in a civil partnership and your partner is actually a British citizen, then the 3-year route is valid for you. Now imagine you were married in Pakistan, for example, or in India. You came on a spouse visa, you extended that visa, you completed your 5 years, you got your ILR, right? That is the 3-year route, which is that falls, those are the kind of people who fall into that bracket. Now, a common misconception and where people end up making mistakes is they think that they have to wait for further 12 months to become a British citizen. Absolutely not true. So if you're on a spouse route, if you're married to a British citizen, or if your partner is a British citizen and in a civil partnership, the day you get your ILR, you can apply the very day to naturalize as a British citizen. So that is something you need to bear in mind. Now, what they look for is that, if say imagine today is 12th of July 2026, then in the last before the 3 years from that date, if you go backwards, you must have been physically present in the UK. If you're not physically present in the UK 3 years from the date of application, your application may be refused. Now, what that date is, because it's very easy to get confused about that date, and I'm going to cover that in the next question. I will help you understand how to calculate that date. So that is the most important part, is that you must have a ILR status or settled status. As soon as you get ILR, you don't need to wait for 12 months. And you must be married to somebody who's a British citizen or in a relationship as a civil partner, and your partner must be a British citizen. Only then you can apply on a 3-year route. Now let's look at what is the 5-year route. So traditionally, 5-year route is, say you were on a skilled worker visa, you came to the UK, you completed 5 years. After that, you applied for ILR. That is what the 5-year route is. It does not include a spouse or civil partner who is a British citizen. That is the easiest way to know. So you came on your own, you got a job in a hospital, for example, you're a skilled worker, you completed 5 years, then you applied for ILR, you got your ILR. But here is the twist that many people forget, and they end up making a mistake and their application gets refused. The day you get ILR, you must wait for further 12 months before you can apply to naturalize as a British citizen. But in the 3-year route, you do not have to wait. But in the 5-year route, you have to wait for further 12 months. So in total, you can apply to naturalize as a British citizen on a 5-year route after spending 6 years. Okay, this is critical. For example, you came in 2020, by 2025, like you see example on the screen, that you completed 5 years of residency, you applied for ILR, you got the ILR, but you cannot apply for naturalization in 2025. You have to wait for 12 months. So please bear that in mind, because if you apply, your application would be refused and you will lose all the fees. The physical presence requirement. So whether you're on a 3-year route or on a 5-year route, there is a requirement that before the date of application, say for example, if I'm looking on a 5-year route, you have to be physically present on the first date 5 years before the application. For example, if we are today applying on, say, 12th of July 2026, we have to look back 5 years before, which would be 12th of July 2021. And a normal person would say that is 5 years before. So I will just check whether I was physically present in the UK on that date or not. If they do that, that is wrong, because the correct date would be 13th of July, as you can see on the screen, 2021, because you have to go back exactly 5 years back, add one day to it, which is 13th of July 2021, and then check whether you were actually physically present in the UK. I had a case where one person was actually out of the UK on that date and the application was refused. On the 3-year route, the question is still the same. You, on the date of, if the application date is 12th of July 2026, I will go back 3 years, which would be 12th of July 2023, and I will add one more day to it, that is 13th of July 2023, to check whether I was inside the UK or not. Okay, so therefore it's essential, whether you're on a spouse route or on a 5-year route, that when you go back the number of years, 5 years or 3 years, you add one day to it and then check whether I was physically present in the UK or not. And many refusals happens because of this reason, and it is specifically mentioned in the rule. This point that comes is the absences from the UK. Now, absences, why are they looking for how many days have you spent outside the UK? Now they're looking at your future intentions, that do you actually want to live in the UK indefinitely? Do you want to be building a life? Do you want to build your life in the UK? So the way they measure is they look at how many days actually you stayed inside the UK, where you were tax resident. Okay, so therefore on a 3-year route and the 5-year route, the number of absences are different. Let's take a look in the on the screen. So on a 5-year route, you must have not been outside of the UK for not more than 450 days in the last 5 years, and in the last 12 months before the date of application, not more than 90 days. Now, if you don't remember the number of days, it's very simple. Take 90 days per year times 5 years, that's 450 days. So that is the total number of days you must have not been outside of the UK. It is quite possible that in 1 year you were 150 days out, but in the total 5 years you were only out for 300 days. You still manage that. Okay, so it's important that you don't confuse that. At, in a maximum of, in every year I cannot be outside of the UK for more than 90 days. That's not true. What they're saying is, in the last 5 years you should have been not outside of the UK for more than 450 days, and 12 months before the date of application, in the last 12 months, you should have not been absent out of the UK for more than 90 days. Now, the easiest way to work it out is, look at your passport stamps, look at the e-tickets in your emails, and it is a painstaking exercise. That's why you need people who can professionally go through your documentation and prepare something for you. I do this all the time. And then you create a immigration history, so that you know that on this and this date you left the UK, on this and this date you came back to the UK, which your stamps and tickets would show, and then you calculate the total number of absences. Now, when you go on the 3-year route, the important thing for you to bear in mind is that you cannot be outside of the UK for more than 270 days, and in the last 12 months before the date of application, not more than 90 days. Now, I want to point out one thing, is that the Home Office has given some leeway. That means for 5 years they can allow up to 480 days also, and on a 3-year route they can allow up to 300 days also. But usually the statutory criteria is, for 5 year you need to be no more than 450 days outside of the UK, and for the 3 years not more than 270 days. So it's important that you recognize that and create a document trail of where you were outside of the UK. The Home Office disregards any absences for up to 2 days. So if you're outside of the UK for 1 day or 2 days, you don't have to include that. Okay. Now let's look at a very sensitive point. This is for people who are refugees who had very difficult circumstances and they entered the UK illegally. Now, what has happened is, recently, and this is a recent change, that earlier, if you entered the UK illegally, you were banned from citizenship. But that ban is no longer in force as per the latest guidance of July 2026, and therefore you must apply to be naturalized as a British citizen. But just because there is no ban doesn't mean that your application would be automatically approved. They would look at evidence, whether you were in control of yourself, or whether there were circumstances where you were trafficked, whether you were a victim of sexual trafficking, or whether you were a slave, or whether you had no control, whether there was a fear of persecution. So all these factors would play into the picture. But when they ask you, did you enter the UK illegally, you should answer it honestly and correctly. Don't answer something that is not honest, because now the ban is not in force. Now, this is a very common question that I get, that can I use an expired English language test? Now, the requirement for the knowledge of English language test is level B1. Now, if you have recently achieved ILR, say a year ago, and that test has expired, now the Home Office guidance is that you do not have to give another test, even if it is expired, as long as it was taken at a Home Office approved center. Number one. Second, that test result was accepted for ILR, and then you're using this for citizenship. In that condition, you do not need to again retake a test, as long as it was at B1 level or higher level, right? That is what you need to bear in mind. So please take a note on the screen. Also, people who are at least the age of 65 or above are exempt from it. People who have medical conditions, who have long-term physical or mental condition that prevents them from taking this test, they are also exempt, but they need to provide an evidence of that. But if you're above the age, say you're 65 or above and you're claiming exemption, then it's completely okay. I had two applicants who were successful. Now, you're also exempt if you are one of the nationals of one of the countries that I mentioned, because English is the language and you're exempt from that. So please bear that in mind. Now comes a very important question, and I get it quite often, and I made a video about it. So, do both referees need to be British citizens? The answer is no. So, the first referee that you have, you need two. First referee needs to be can be of any nationality, but they must be a professional person. A professional person could be minister of religion, or person who is in a regulated profession that requires license, like a chartered accountant, airline pilot, managing director of a company which is VAT registered, a lecturer or a faculty. There is a whole list of these professions. But if your profession does not fall into that bracket, you can always tell the Home Office by writing in a cover letter saying that I know only these two people. Say, for example, he is a Vietnamese, citizen. He has known me for 4 years, for example, but he's an architect and he's registered as an architect, not only in Vietnam, but he's also registered as an architect in the UK. Okay, so because that architect also requires license, and therefore I am recommending this person, and I urge you to please consider him as my first referee. If you do that, they have the discretion whether to accept it or ask you to find another one. Now, the second referee is mandatory that they have to be a British citizen. It is extremely important. There is no choice of any other nationality. They have to be a British citizen. They could be a friend, they could be your neighbor, they could be your line manager, they could be someone who you have interacted over the years, like hairstylist that you've been going for 5 years. They've known you genuinely for 3 years or more, and they are, for example, above the age of 25. So they have to be British, number one. Now, if they're under the age of 25, they have to be a professional person. The second referee is rather more easy, because sometimes people have trouble finding a referee who is a professional person. So my recommendation is, try to find somebody who has known you, who you know is a British national. You need to see their passport copy. And even if they are a, say, retail analyst, or for example, a marketing manager, they would be eligible to be your referee number two if they're above the age of 25. If they're under the age of 25, you have to find one of the professions, like a teacher, chartered accountant, or minister of religion. That is the requirement. So please make sure you have that in mind. Another important thing that people need to know is that, both if you have two referees, say you know a husband and wife who's your neighbor, they cannot be related to each other, and they cannot both be your referees. You can only take one of them, because the referee one and referee two cannot be related to each other. Second, they cannot be your immigration advisor, solicitor, or barrister who's doing this naturalization application on instructions. Number three, they cannot work for home office. They cannot be a referee. So always look for people who you have worked with. As long as your line manager has known you or your neighbor has known you, right? Try to always have the referee. One final tip: if you're a referee and you are living in the same building, in the same household, like you've rented one room, they've rented another room, and you share the same address, the chances are that will not be acceptable because they share the same address. But if you are in a different flat, you're in flat 3, they're in flat 6, in the same building, that is acceptable. Now, how can somebody prove that they're a person of good character if they have a bad record? Okay, this nobody, people always tell you that you have to be a person of good character, you need to be clean, and you don't need to have any debts, civil judgment against you, no bankruptcy. But what if you had a bad experience? For example, if you have any conviction, not just in the UK or overseas, you have to declare it. If you had any civil judgment, for example, your landlord took you to court because you had rent arrears, you did not pay, and they got the judgment in their favor, and now the judgment is recorded, and you are in a dilemma as to whether I should declare it or not. My answer is always declare it and always disclose it, but you can mitigate it by writing a cover letter and explain circumstances like what was the extenuating circumstances that resulted in such thing, or is there an explanation that the caseworker should know. Let me give you an example. Say you were due rent, you could not pay rent, you defaulted on rent, they took you to court, and then there is a judgment against you. But then you say, I disclose that there is a civil judgment against me because I owed money to my landlord, but I had been paying rent on time, but I lost my job 3 months ago. For example, if that is the reality, here's my redundancy papers, and after that, I had to sign on universal credit. As a result, I have not been able to pay the rent, but I have asked the judge to set aside this judgment through my solicitors, who has come up with a payment plan that I can, pay this outstanding arrears in say 2 years' time with X amount of money per month. Now, when you explain that with the evidence that shows that there is a judgment against you, you declared it, then there is an explanation that you lost your job, then you show a proof of that you're on allowance, universal credit, for example, or job seekers allowance, and then you have a payment plan in place that your solicitor has provided you. If you explain like this, they will give you you know you'll be coming across as someone who is accountable, who's responsible, who is conducive to public good, and they want to have people like that. Sometimes what happens is people make bad decisions. They were arrested due to drunk driving, and now people thinking like, oh god, what do I do? I've got a criminal record. Now I want to tell you this: first of all, disclose it, and then explain that you've done something about it. If you were arrested for drunk driving and you started attending rehab clinic for alcohol, addiction, and you've got the name of the supervisor, you can show on which and which dates you went. They will cross verify, and since then you've been sober and you've not had any incidents related to driving, any offenses, that shows that you've turned around your life. Why should you use a cover letter in the application? I always recommend, and I've been sharing my cover letters with all the subscribers for free. And I will explain why cover letters. Because the application form is mostly yes or no questions and dates and information, you have maximum space of 1,000 characters to write. In a cover letter, normally you can explain not only about extenuating circumstances, but you can explain based on what grounds or what criteria you are applying to naturalize as a British citizen. For example, you can say, I'm married to someone who's a British citizen, so I am applying under that 3-year route to naturalize as a British citizen. Therefore, I am providing the proof of British citizenship of my partner or of my husband, for example. Then, in terms of absences, I have not been outside of the country for not more than in the last 3 years for not more than 270 days, and in the last 12 months, not more than 90 days. I have to support that. I have provided air tickets and my scanned passport copy of all the pages, including the blank pages. Now, if you write a cover letter like that in a structured manner, what it does is it makes the job easier of the case officer who's actually reviewing your application. Because remember, everything that you declare is going to be cross verified, cross checked, and if you have any error or any omission or what you should have disclosed but you didn't disclose, it will go against you and can result in a refusal. Given the fees is £1,839, they are doing the job to check. And if you make an error, or if you deceive them, or if you falsify anything, you will lose out on the fees. Okay, so you need to make sure that you use the cover letter to address each and every situation as to how you meet the statutory criteria, what were the certain circumstances in which you have said yes in terms of good character, where there was criminality or something. You need to explain that, and that cover letter gives the opportunity to minimize the work for the caseworker. So they will look at each and every point, and they will check whether there is an evidence to it, or whether there is some deviation from it. Okay. That's how you make a strong application. Now, as much as I would like to say that I've given you these insights into the most frequently asked questions where 99% of the people make mistakes, I think it's important for you to understand that there will be certain situations where you will not know exactly what to do and how the legislation can be interpreted. That is where I come into the picture. And if you're struggling and you want a full end-to-end service where you want your documentation prepared, you want your form filled up, and you want to submit it yourself, and you want documents to be uploaded on TLS Contact, you can always reach out to me in one end-to-end fee package. The link of those packages are in the video down below. But my hope is that the guidance is so clear for you that you look at the guidance that I have given you, and also the Home Office Naturalization Guidance, which is the official guidance that was released in July 2026, that you follow that and you make a successful application and you achieve your dream of becoming a British citizen. I hope you've liked this video. If you are looking for detailed step-by-step guide as to how to apply to naturalize as a British citizen on a 5-year route or 3-year route, that is also in my video on the link on the right hand side. Please do watch that so that you know how to fill up the application form. And in case you need my assistance, you can always come back to me. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for the latest insights, because it is through these insights you will learn the latest changes in UK immigration law. And given the law is changing, I highly recommend that if you qualify to naturalize as a British citizen under the relevant route, you should apply as soon as possible before the new changes come into play. Till next time, take care.